Hey there! Have you ever stopped to wonder what actually happens when you flip a light switch? Where does that power really come from? Well, today, we're going to explore that exact question as we dive into the world of renewable energy.
It seems like a simple question, right? But the answer is part of this huge global story about how we power, well, everything. Your electricity can come from all sorts of different places, from giant dams, from the sun shining way up in the sky, and even from deep inside the earth.
So everything really boils down to two main types of energy. First, you've got your non-renewable energy. Think of things like coal and oil. The thing to remember here is that they're limited. There's only so much on our planet. But then, on the other side, we have renewable energy. This comes from sources like the sun and the wind that for you and me will basically never ever run out.
And here's a great way to picture it. On one side, you have the sources that we burn and use up, like fossil fuels. But on the other, you have these amazing natural cycles. The sun that's always shining, the wind that's always blowing, and the water that's always flowing. These are the sources of renewable energy, and that's why we say they're basically unlimited.
Okay, so to really get a handle on all this, we're going to go on a little energy tour. We'll start with power from water, then we'll move on to the sun and wind. After that, we'll look at heat from the Earth itself, and at the very end, we'll pull it all together and think about our energy future. Ready? Let's go.
First stop, power from water. People have been using the power of moving water for thousands of years. But today, we do it on a truly massive scale with something called hydroelectric and tidal energy.
So how in the world do you turn a river into electricity? Well, it's all about controlling the flow. A giant dam holds back the water, which creates a whole lot of pressure. Then, when that water is released, it rushes down and spins a special machine called a turbine. That spinning motion is the absolute key, because that turbine is connected to a generator, and the generator is what actually makes the electricity.
Okay, let's just pause on those two words for a second, because they are super important. A turbine is basically a machine with blades that spins when something like water or air moves past it. And a generator, well, that's the machine that takes that spinning energy and turns it into electrical energy. So, a really easy way to remember it is the turbine spins and the generator creates. You are going to see this combination again and again. So, what's the good and the bad? Well, a major advantage of hydroelectric power is that the water is totally free, and it's clean. It doesn't make any of those harmful greenhouse gases. The main disadvantage, though, is the dam itself. Building one is incredibly expensive, and it can really mess with the local environment, especially for fish living in the river. But water gives us power in another way too, through the ocean's tides. That natural rise and fall of the sea level, it's a really powerful force. Tidal energy systems are designed to capture that movement, and they use it to spin underwater turbines that work pretty much just like the ones in a dam. Now, the huge advantage here is that tides are so predictable. Unlike the sun or the wind, we know exactly when the tides will come in and go out. The disadvantages, though, are pretty big. These systems are expensive, and you can only build them in certain special places along the coast where the tides are super strong. Okay, so we've talked about the power of water. Now let's look up toward the sky. Our next two sources, the sun and the wind, are all about using the energy that's right above our heads. First up, we have solar energy, which comes straight from the sun. We capture it using these special panels you see on rooftops all the time. The technical name for them is photovoltaic panels, or just PV panels for short, and what they do is honestly pretty amazing. They can turn sunlight directly into electricity. The biggest advantage of solar power is pretty obvious, right? The sun's energy is completely free, and it shines almost everywhere in the world. The clear disadvantage, of course, is that it depends on the weather. It doesn't work at night, and it doesn't make nearly as much power when it's very cloudy. Next up, wind energy. These huge spinning things you see out in fields are called wind turbines. It's pretty simple, really. The wind pushes against the giant blades, and that makes them turn. And inside that main part at the top, we find those familiar friends again. The spinning blades turn a turbine, which is hooked up to a generator that makes the electricity. See? Same idea. So, what about the pros and cons here? Well, on the plus side, wind is free, and it's a very clean source of power. It makes zero pollution. The disadvantages are that you can only really build them in places that are windy all the time, and some people think they can be a bit noisy. And of course, if the wind isn't blowing, there's no power. All right, for the last stop on our tour, we're not looking at the water or the sky. We're looking deep down, right beneath our feet. we're going to explore how we can actually use our planet's own natural heat for energy.
This is called geothermal energy. Geo is Greek for earth, and thermal means heat. So, earth heat. Deep underground, our planet is incredibly hot, and this heat can turn underground water into steam. In a geothermal plant, we pipe that steam up to the surface, and guess what it does? Yep, you got it. It spins a turbine to generate electricity.
Now, a huge advantage of geothermal is how reliable it is. It works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no matter what the weather is doing outside. The biggest limitation, though, is location. You can only build these power plants in certain places on Earth, like Iceland or parts of Italy, where that underground heat is close enough to the surface to actually use.
So, there we have it. We've looked at power from water, from the sky, and from the Earth itself. Now let's bring it all home into a quick review of what we've learned about our energy future.
Let's do a quick vocabulary recap. We talked about renewable energy. That's the kind that never runs out. We saw how a turbine spins with water or wind, and how a generator turns that spin into electricity. For hydroelectric power, we need a dam, and for solar power, we use a photovoltaic panel. And we learned that all of these help us avoid making harmful greenhouse gases.
So, what exactly are greenhouse gases? Well, basically, they're the harmful pollution that's made when we burn non-renewable fuels like coal and oil. These gases get trapped in our atmosphere and are a huge cause of environmental problems, which is exactly why finding clean, renewable options is so important.
And that leads us to our final, and maybe the most important question of all. Now that you've seen the good and the bad of water, wind, solar, and geothermal power, which of these do you think is the best way forward for our future? As we've seen, there's no single easy answer. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.